association with the Telegraph and Exide Industries Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, defamation or calumny, as we all know, is a false statement, a kind of a slander which is perpetrated against an individual, any society, socio-religious group, a government, any organization, institution, primarily to harm the reputation of that organization. We are, however, living in very troubled times when defamation has undergone a completely different orientation. We have journalists spending night behind bars. We have fatwas being issued against writers. We have poetry festivals or lit fest being disrupted because of people considering them to have made defamatory remarks either in the past or in the recent future, in the present. And we have also the horrific incident of Charlie Hebdo in our minds, where people were gunned down for putting up lampoonings or cartoons. And of course, we cannot forget the bloggers being hacked down every day in our neighboring country, Bangladesh. So what I'm trying to convey is that defamation has undergone a completely different connotation over the last 10 years, not just in our country, but all over the world. And all I can say to the audience is that please be aware that whatever you are putting up in Facebook posts or Instagram, just be careful, because even your right sense of humor can land you in trouble, because we have seen sarcasms, plain jokes and banters that are also being construed as defamatory. Now the point is, how does defamation get entangled with creative liberty? Because creative liberty, we all know, creativity is something which is very cerebral, which has a very high aesthetic value, and it certainly cannot be equated with slander. But that is one dimension of defamation, creativity. Because creativity cannot be restrained in one dimension. It stretches over a wide spectrum, and there are indeed expressions which do cause a lot of outrage amongst people. To put it plainly, creative writing can also be eclectic. It can be demagogic, and often it becomes provocative also. So the creativity is often creating a kind of a social imbalance, a kind of an outrage among several people. Like, it can be a particular piece of art can be appreciated by me, but it can be very outrageous for somebody else from some other community. Similarly, a small piece of poetry, a small short story, or a lampooning, for that matter, can also be considered as very obnoxious, very obtrusive by a certain section of population. That is why the House proposes that creativity or creative liberty is the gateway to defamation. Now, to debate on the subject, we have 6 very eminent personalities with us, and we are really fortunate to have them. I'll start from the left. On the left of the stage is Dr. Garga Chatterjee. Garga Chatterjee is an MBBS from Calcutta and a PhD from Harvard University. He is currently a professor at the prestigious Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and but he's more known to us at least, for his very incisive writings in Huffington Post, First Post, and such others. He's frequented in various news channels, debates. I've seen a number of times on NDTV, Times Now, and other news channels. We are really thankful for having him here. On his right is Sharmila Ray. Sharmila Ray is currently the head of the Department of City College, Kolkata. But she's more well known as a poet. Uh, she's she travels extensively all over the world to attend poetry festivals and is very well known, familiar face in the literary interactions in the city. At least I have seen her in the city, but she will be definitely, she travels all over the world. Should she is or definitely might be familiar with other places. So thank you, ma'am, for being with us. And on her right is Sabyasachi Choudhury. Sabyasachi is a practicing lawyer at Kolkata High Court, and he tackles very contentious issues, including defamation, I'm being told. And he will be able to put the spotlight on what are the legal complications of defamation. He's a member of the Indian Law Institute, West Bengal unit, and he's a very well-known debater in the debating circles. Thank you very much for being here. The trio would be speaking in favor of the motion. Those who will be speaking against the motion are Mr. Ashoke Viswanathan. We all know him. He's an award-winning film director. He won the Indira Gandhi National Award for debuting film, and subsequently went on to win jury awards for each and every film that he did. He's an alma mater of Pune Film Institute and is currently the dean of Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. And he's known to be a very strong debater. We see him very frequently in a lot of television channels. On his left is Savi Sharma. Savi is a very well-known writer. She came into the spotlight with her very popular novel, Everyone Has a Story, which I'm being told sold more than 2.5 lakh copies. And she's now currently rated as the top 5 English lady writers in our country, along with the likes of Divya Karuna Banerjee, Sudha Murthy, Titi Shinoy, and Bharti Mukherjee, and the likes of that. Savi is not only a novelist, but she's a blogger. She maintains, runs a blog, which is with the name Life and People, where she writes about positivity, meditation, laws of attraction, spirituality, and such other things. She travels widely all across India. I'm not really sure whether she travels outside India, but she's known to be a good speaker. And thank you very much. She's based in Surat. She's traveled all the way to Calcutta. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect to have a good hand, big round of applause for her. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have Sir Swapan Chakrabarti, who the most revered, one of the most revered intellectuals in Calcutta, all over India, in fact. Sir had been very recently the director of the National Library, but now he's currently the Kobiguru Rabindranath Tagore Distinguished Chair in the Humanities Department at Presidency University. People who are slightly senior, like us, we have seen Sir's, we have heard Sir's debate, but Sir has now, has become slightly reclusive. He doesn't appear in any television channels and not to speak of any newspapers and all. Stays away, but it is only because our secretary, being an alumni of the same school, he has somehow convinced Swapan Chakrabarti to be here. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Ladies and gentlemen, today's proceedings is going to be conducted by Debanjan Chakrabarti. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a man with who's worn different hats at different times. He has been a journalist with a leading newspaper. He went on to become a professor in Vishwabharati University and is currently the director of British Council's Eastern and Northeastern region. So I'm sure, sir, this is going to be a new hat for you. So I'll hand over the proceedings to Dr. Debanjan Chakrabarti to conduct these proceedings. Thank you very much. Enjoy the video.
Hello, am I audible? This is the first time I've been strapped onto a rock musician-like contraption around my ears. So is that all right right at the back? Okay, thanks. Thank you very much first to Eastern Metropolitan Club for inviting me and putting together this brilliant panel for a debate that is very relevant at this point of time and for here and now. I'm also very thankful to the sponsors, the Telegraph and Exide, for supporting this debate, and largely because debates, apart from the element of the spectacle of debates, it's also a pillar of democracy and everything that we hold dear, I hope. The topic that this distinguished panel will be debating today is creative liberty is only a gateway to defamation. And this is the first annual Samar Ghosh annual memorial debate. And it's welcome to all panelists to begin with. This is a very interesting topic, but also something that I'm a little bit wary of because there are a range of legal nuances around this particular topic, and I am certainly not the most qualified here to be speaking about this, but as I was going through some of my own reading around the issue of creativity, freedom of speech, and issues of defamation, libel, and slander, one particular international case caught my eye, which was in 1987 in the US, where an MIT academic sued Sylvia Plath's estate for the novel, the film Bell Jar, the film version of the novel Bell Jar, where she accused that she was in the same mental hospital with Sylvia Plath in the 50s, and she accused Sylvia Plath of basically defaming her and creating this character of Bell Jar on her image. So that really stood out because this happened so long after the original novel was published, and quite a bit after the film was released. So there are nuances there. In Indian law, I think Shobhu Shashda will be able to confirm it's both a civil and a criminal offense. Sections 499 and 500. But one of the very interesting things is that all the debates and discussions on defamation are clustered around ideas of truth, good faith, public good, and there really is not much of any defense of creativity against when cases of defamation come up. So I found that particularly interesting. And I think what gives all of this a very interesting twist is, of course, current technology, digital technology, and the IT Act of 2000 and the Information Technology Amendment Acts of 2007. These have again brought in fresh sort of twists to the whole case. Closer home in India, of course, we have had the celebrated case of Padmavat/Padmavati. And also very interestingly, not so long back, you would remember a film called Bindu Barber had to drop the word barber because salon owners and beauty parlors from Bandra had objected to the word barber, and so Shah Rukh Khan, in all his wisdom, decided to drop the word barber. There's a whole range of things to tease out here. So without further ado, Can I just quickly explain the structure of the debate? Each speaker, beginning with the proposition, will speak for 7 minutes. At the end of the 6th minute, they will hear a bell. And thank you very much for being the timekeeper. I really can't multitask, so thank you for that. And then I'll go to the opposition and it will proceed that way. We are not having interjections while the debate is on, but I will read that at the end of once all the proposition speakers are through. The leader of the opposition will be able to sum up, and then I'll come back to the leader of the proposition to sum up. And there will be a short Q&A with the audience, and I will request members of the audience to put questions, specific questions to individual speakers. And may I please remind beforehand that the questions can't be comments. Questions have an interrogation mark at the end of them, not a full stop. So please be brief while putting your questions. Without further ado then, may I please invite Dr. Garga Chatterjee to put forward his arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Eastern Metropolitan Club, for this opportunity, and I am the first speaker for the motion. So I speak as someone who not only has been, let's say, defamed, as I consider it, but has been defamed on a daily basis and probably being defamed now as I speak. I've put my kind of Twitter and Facebook off, but it's kind of an ongoing phenomena, has been going on for the last 4 or 5 years since I've been in public space. And I'm also fighting a case for defamation, to seek damages for defamation, etc. So I speak with some experience, though that doesn't carry the day, but I would like to kind of put that out. I'm an interested party in this whole, wherever it is, where few actually have liberty at all of any kind, let alone creative liberty. So that kind of limits who can speak, what can be spoken, what can be spoken against whom, with consequence. Because if it's not consequential, it hardly is ever defamation. Against any big leader of the day, you would have things being spoken, thousands, lakhs, crores of just, plainly defamatory words. But it never attracts, let's say, crores of cases. So what is going on? What we're saying, creative liberty always leading to defamation, is only when it's being consequential, only when it's hitting hard to the effect that the target is hit with some consequence, right? So let's have the kind of the space cleared out. But let me generalize the term and say even truth itself is really a gateway to defamation in most cases. Truth, unfettered truth, truth as we know it, is always necessarily a gateway to defamation. If all of our lives today were thrown open, okay, by other people, many of us would feel extremely defamed, right? So creative liberty, in a way, rides on not be said, true or untrue. If we take the idea of fame, which is kind of intrinsic to the idea of defamation, fame is a combination of two things. It's what people think you are and what you want people to think you are. It's kind of a combination of those two things. So defamation, which bursts fame or does some, tarnishes fame, either has to do with kind of tweaking either of these two. They can be true or they can be untrue, It can kind of burst your false pretense, or it can actually be saying something pretty meaningful. The problem with creative bounds, there is a real boundary. It is the power equation in this world, right? We live in a world where there is a calculus of power and power is not equally distributed. Standing on a higher pedestal and with a mic which has a higher volume, and you could be saying something back to me, maybe as defamatory as we are doing, but it won't be the same thing. So when we are talking about creativity, we have to really keep in mind that finally, whether creative liberty is a gateway to defamation really depends on what power equation or what power calculus are we talking about. There are real interests involved. And in this day and age, and I think because that's what begets this debate, that's what we are debating today, what we have is the most powerful, a huge concentration of power, the most powerful have concentrated power and have been basically attacking, people who have been using creative liberty. And also there has been a counter power of various kinds which has, so it's fighting it out. If we are fighting it out and we have defamations being thrown about on all sides, finally there is something good about it. Because then there is something about people's power that finally decides what wins. And I say this from a position of hope, that with all the din that ranges from creative liberty to frank slander, people should be judges. People should be judges of what constitutes defamation. In this time and age, given the power equation, creative liberty is necessarily almost a gateway to defamation. That's what we see in this real world. But let me give you a few examples. The examples which will actually tell you that no matter how creative you are, it will lead to consequences and defamation if the power equation is not on your side. So one is from the Cold War period in Slovenia. It was part of Yugoslavia. There's a philosopher by the name of Slavoj Zizek. So he was younger at that point of time, and there used to be farcical elections. People might not know this, but in every socialist country there used to be elections every now and then, right? So during those elections, of course, there's no other opposition, and the person who won or the party which won 100% of the votes. What Slavoj Žižek and his friends did in that case, well, they were a youth group, so they, during the counting day, which didn't mean much, what they did was they brought out hourly bulletins which says that the ruling party is progressive. It might win. It might win. It kind of came out with bulletins every 3, 4, 5 hours, which made a whole farce about this thing. That's using creativity. That's using it very creatively. They were not only kind of, it led to kind of defamation of the powers to be in a very subtle way. There's nothing slanderous about it, And let's say creative kind of liberty. We live in Bangla, and it is also part of defamation which should also be taken in light heart. For example, I do not know how many of you frequent the Kolkata Maidan or the Derby matches. I will just speak one line. It is very creative. It is defamatory, but we should take it in a light heart. It just says, from the East Bengal Gallery towards Mohun Bagan, Cha Chini Pudina. I do not know how many of you got it, but if you get it, you will understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for that wonderful opening. Attaching the idea of consequence to defamation. If there's no consequence, there really is no defamation. You spoke, and you made that wonderful reference to one of my favorite sort of philosopher raconteurs, Slavoj Žižek. So thank you very much for that. With that, may I come to Ashoke Viswanathan for his opening remarks against the proposition.
Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, if I were to say that
there were several Shakespearean actors who played Hamlet in different ways and were famous for different things. Professor Chakrabarti will appreciate that Michael Redgrave was famous for his voice. Lionel Barrymore was famous for his profile. And Lord Laurence Olivier was famous for his wife. Would you shoot me? Talking of shooting, if I were to say that contrary to popular opinion, the great Abraham Lincoln was not a very nice man. Whoever didn't agree with Lincoln, Lincoln shot him down. The only man Lincoln could not shoot down was Wilkes Booth. So Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln. The point I'm trying to make is that you can fool some of the people all the time, trying to become the Prime Minister of a country. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen? Creative liberty is something, and defamation is something quite different. I do not understand for the life of me how creative liberty, which embraces within itself the high emotions of creativity, which has cerebration, not celebration, intellect, emotion, because every creative word is a combination of the head and the heart, and responsibility. Who will say that creative liberty is devoid of responsibility? The moment when you add responsibility to your creative faculties, to your cerebral faculties, to your emotional outpourings, it cannot be a gateway to defamation. Rather, it will prove to be a filter. Because creative liberty is always tempered by social liberty, unless you happen to be on the Republic channel where everyone speaks at the same time. These are the bad examples that we are seeing. That you on a particular channel can be shown as opening your mouth, but somebody else's voice coming through. These are not to be followed. Let us remember that creative liberty is actually something very profound, and I was happy to see that Dr. Garga Chatterjee, who spoke for the motion, and obviously in variance to what we are saying, agreed with some of the things that I am saying now. In fact, in true parliamentary tradition, we can appropriate him. We have, in fact, now, with me and the two, 4 speakers on this side and 2 on the other. So this imbalance is only natural because, after all progress depends on the unreasonable man, as George Bernard Shaw so succinctly put it in the revolutionary handbook appended to Man and Superman. You see, winds flow from areas of high pressure to low pressure. Heat travels from areas of high concentration to low concentration. So an imbalance is necessary, and Dr. Chatterjee provided that. But where I would differ a little with Dr. Chatterjee is that he said that creative liberty is boundless. That is where I disagree. It is bounded by your own responsibility. As a filmmaker, I know what to show and what not to show, when to show what, because I always have the sensitivity of the recipient in my mind. I will speak my mind. As he said, the truth can be very hurting. I will speak the truth, but I am indulging in art when I'm talking about creativity. And as even Lenin said, for art to be truly effective as propaganda, it has to be, first of all, art. Dr. Chatterjee also mentioned the Soviet bloc in Slovenia, but we cannot give him full marks for that. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, let me briefly sum up the points that I wish to make. The word creative liberty means that you have a freedom, and you have a freedom to actually be creative, not to copy others or to plagiarize. Because plagiarization, in a sense, is a slander. It's also a defamation. You're actually effacing the rights of the person. So creative liberty is anathema to any kind of defamation, because it is creative, because that word creative is there. Were it simply liberty, I could say, well, yes, liberty is a gateway. And when you use the word gateway, gateway has certain criminal connotations, as the legal experts on the other side would say. That means a passport. At the moment I can write poetry, I become a crook and I should be put into jail. Sharmila will surely not agree. Poetry is something which droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, because that is what Shakespeare does when he speaks of the quality of mercy. Poetry is something supremely creative. It comes out of goodness, and that's what Dr. Chatterjee also said, that there's a great deal of good to it. That's why I said when he's speaking from our side. So something which is coming up from within with a wealth of emotion and with a wealth of intellect, how can that be a gateway to some kind of criminality? Defamation is something false, something illegal. When you accuse someone of something which he has not done, that is defamation. How can an artist, a theatrical worker, a cinema artist be accused of being defamatory? Or because he has the skill to create, to present something which would defame someone else? These are apples and oranges. These are as different as chalk and cheese. There is no comparison at all. Just because we find that in today's world, people are not so creative, that they do not know how to use their liberty, that they do not, for example, even know how to use the English language, which we are using now, where we see bad examples all over, on television, on cinema, on the internet, doesn't mean that that is the order of the day. It's like that famous invention of the mad scientist who combined yeast and shoe polish for people who wanted to rise and shine. That is not the situation, ladies and gentlemen. I end my speech by saying that this is a completely fallacious notion, and I request you to forthwith throw it out of the window because it is incompetent, inefficient, and immaterial. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ashok, for that wonderful defense against the opposition and approximating the idea of Keats, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. And you touched upon wonderfully on celebration and not celebration, and you have introduced the idea of that. May I turn to Sharmila to put forward her arguments for the motion.
Good evening, everybody. I start my session with asking a simple question. What is the line between acceptable and unacceptable? The motion today is creative liberty is only a gateway to defamation. There is a cue here, liberty. Liberty does not mean necessarily going against ethics and moral values. For example, in military parlance, like particularly when you have naval shore leave, you got called the sailor goes on liberty, not freedom, because the release is temporary, not infinite. We must have a balance between the cliche and the intelligence. And the biggest challenge is to make the people think for themselves, not seeing what is it and just getting haywire by seeing that. I think it's Mark Twain, who said that humor is a very serious thing. Indeed, it is. Sometimes humorous acts like cartoons, lyrics, songs can make you think twice as fast as any other thing, can make you do any action which is beyond reason, and that is more important than a heavy article with footnotes and endnotes. And it is here that we have to be careful. Why? Why do we have to be careful? Because in today's world, which is crisscrossed by violence, religious fanaticism, and implications of diversity. The list is endless. We must be responsible for our acts. We cannot incite slander any group, any community, any single person. Hammering human dignity leads nowhere. If we got to exist here in this planet, a pale blue dot, which Carl Sagan says, we have to live harmoniously. All reasons appeal at some level of justification to substantive value, commitments, and these may or may not be shared by people of divergent religious and cultural backgrounds. Creativity does not happen from heaven. It is, which is your background, your cultural ethos, what are you, how you grow up, that makes your creativity. It is not something, a standalone kind of a thing. And for example, if I talk about the Danish cartoons, my pronunciation, please forgive my pronunciation, which came out in Jalen Postum, September 30th, 2005. There were 12 editorial cartoons of Muhammad as a bomb-throwing terrorist and a suicide bomber. Here, I think I must quote Wendy Brown. She says, "We have to appreciate the difference, particular modalities of belief and hermeneutics, that is in a Broadway interpretation, within religious tradition. Without appreciation of this difference, the offense and injury the cartoons caused for many remained unarticulated and unrecognized, the debate locked in an unflexible, one-sided hermeneutics." Again, another important theorist, Talal Asad, he observed secularists see themselves critiquing, in the name of freedom, the power to suppress human freedom. It's a theoretical fallacy. Declare the opponents of secular liberalism irrational by standards of rationality which all rational people accept. It will do us no good to follow this, that we think of the other as other. We must remember the anti-Semitic propaganda of the last century and its consequences, Holocaust. We have to give meaning to the notion of dignity and the rights of freedom of others. Otherwise, seeing everything through the lens of liberal theory masks contingency. Creativity is not aside from all this. It is not apart from all this. It is not apart from your life, you as a political animal. It is all incorporated within you. So, if at all we want to exist, we must find that space that we sometimes fail to find, the one that gives us an equal right to take a different attitude. Since it allows us a question, there is a hope. Question is a hope. Otherwise, there will be no dialogue, coexistence, reconciliation, but only a dialogue of the deaf and dumb on one side and assertion of the right, leading to defamation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharmila, for your arguments for the motion. And you reminded me of V.S. Naipaul's famous articulation against Salman Rushdie's fatwa, saying the fatwa is a rather extreme form of literary criticism. And the way you also forwarded the idea that rights of others need to be respected in this conversation on creative liberty, and that essentially you meant that the right to extend your fists basically ends where someone else's nose begins. So thank you very much. And with that, may I turn to Savi Sharma, for your arguments against the motion. And let's hear your story on this.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me here. I don't believe that I'm standing here because people sitting behind me, they have knowledge and wisdom in various fields. I'm just a little storyteller. So let me just talk in stories. I believe there are three kinds of author, three kinds of writers. One who knows very vaguely about the history they are writing, but still they blithely ignore what they know and they just write whatever they want to write. Then there are second type who never goes out of what the history holds. They write exactly what they know about the history and they write it correctly, which we see in documentaries. And then there are third kind of writers who knows that this is the history or this is the thing, but they change certain things. They take some liberty for the purpose of telling a story. Now, I have a simple question. Why do we tell stories? Why are there stories? Is it necessary? Are stories necessary to live? I think there can be two answers to this. First is no. Like, see animals who breathe, who live, who eat, sleep, and die one day. So we can live like that without stories. But then there will be no difference between humans and animals. We have stories, and because of that, we are actually humans. Because only because of stories, we know what the past was, how our ancestors lived. We learn lessons from them. They are all stories, mythological stories, histories, they have happened, and we only know about them because somebody has written them, somebody has narrated them to us, and because of that, we can learn something. So I truly believe that if you are telling a story, and if you feel that certain kind of change is required, Krishna told in Mahabharata that change is the only constant. So let me take an example of Amish Tripathi's Immortals of Meluha. In that, Amish mentioned Shiva, Lord Shiva, as a human being. So many can say that this is wrong. You can't put God as a character, as a human being. But he used that to narrate a story. That story was a part of his imagination and some historical facts, some mythological facts, which he learned about Shiva through various books, history books, and mythological books. And he used that creative liberty to show Shiva as a human being because he felt that that is necessary to tell a story, to inspire people today. For example, Ashwin Sanghi's book, Chanakya Chant. So it tells story about Chanakya and Chandragupta Maurya, how Chanakya used his nitis to make Chandragupta Maurya a king. And that simultaneously the story of Ganga Sagar, who made Chandini, a girl from slum areas of India, president of India. So how he did that was using Chanakya's niti. So you can say that it's been 2,500 years later the story is being told. But whatever has been said was very similar. The politicals, the kings, the rulers, everything was still there and it's still there in India or in this world even after 2,500 years. So he used that liberty to tell a story today which will relate to people. Well, let me give you another example. We want our kids to learn about Ramayana, Mahabharata, about Krishna, Ram, and we want that they get some value from that. But what do? Do we give them, like we sit opening a Bhagavad Gita or Ramcharitmanas or Bhagavad Katha and we tell them stories? No, we show them cartoons. Bal Ganesha, we show them Hanuman. We show them the serials based on Krishna's life or Rama's life. So there can be people who say that, Ram, Krishna, they are gods, and you can't put them as a cartoon characters, like funny cartoons. You can't defame God. But no, it's not defaming. It's using a creative liberty and showing that, okay, a story can be narrated in this way. So I truly believe that people or writers or storytellers who clearly ignores the history because they wanted to do for themselves, or they're just trying to make a point, it's wrong. But when a writer or when a storyteller changes something to make a sense in today's world, I believe it's really necessary. And it's not defaming, it's there because we tell stories to inspire people, we tell stories to make a sense, we tell stories so that we can learn something from our history, from our mythology. So I believe it's truly necessary, and to change something for that purpose is truly very clear, and it is agreeable because you need to change certain things because you have to make a sense. So even, for example, when we write something and we show a very positive world, people sometimes say that, world is cruel and world is not such positive. It's not a fairy tale which we see in books and movies. We tell stories to give hope to people. And if we show the black reality, if we just show the dark reality that the world is so cruel, which is, it's not. There is cruelty, but there is kindness, there is love, there is compassion. And only because of that we are alive. So stories are there to give that hope, to give that inspiration that there is kindness, there is goodness. So I truly believe that this creative liberty is definitely essential, and it makes our lives better, and it makes our life worth living. Thank you.
Thank you, Savi, for that wonderful argument against the motion and mentioning three kinds of writers and the various kinds of the degrees of creative liberties taken by each. And I was momentarily reminded of Yuval Noah Harari, who is now sort of creating waves with his idea that everything that human beings do come down to the fact that we believe in myths and narratives, including the fiction of money. So with that, I'll turn to the proposition to Shokoshachida to make his arguments for the motion.
Good evening. I start my speech by asking a question which, according to some, form part of poetry, not the kind of poetry that Ashokda was talking about, but nonetheless, it was justified as poetry. A question which became a rage in India slightly more than 2 decades ago. Choli ke piche kya hai? Chunri ke niche kya hai? The answer is creative liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, sir, the motion today makes a distinction between creativity and creative liberty. The poetry that is being talked about by Ashokda is creativity. But the moment you take liberties with creativity, you are transporting yourself to a different genre. And this is where the next two important words come in. That whether this creative liberty is becoming a gateway to defamation. We on this side, we are not saying that creativity per se amounts to defamation. We on this side, we are not saying that creativity is to be scuttled. But moment you take liberties with it, that also per se is not amounting to defamation, but yes, it's only a gateway to defamation. Now this is where the second important word in today's motion comes into effect, that is gateway. The very fact that you are taking liberties with your creativity per se would not amount to defamation. But yes, if you are taking liberties with your creativity, you are exposing yourself to the borderline case where you are facing the gateway. If you cross the gateway, it's defamation. If you are on this side of gateway, it's not defamation. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, the motion recognizes the difference between creativity and creative liberty. Secondly, if you take liberties with your creativity, then you are exposing yourself to a gateway, which may or may not lead to defamation. If you are on this side of the gateway, it's fine. But if you cross the line, and sometimes the line is thin and blurred, then it may amount to defamation.
Now, the very concept of liberty, whether you call it creative liberty or any form of liberty, there is a sense of unrestricted freedom and another sense of quite opposite in value of some sort of a restriction of reasonableness. The leader of the opposition propounded the theory of reasonable man, quoting from George Bernard Shaw. Our very own constitution gives us 5 liberties that has been enshrined in the preamble. Liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Now, out of these 5, ladies and gentlemen, 4 of them are such which is intangible. That is, it cannot be qualitatively or quantitatively measured. Your thoughts cannot be measured by me or by anybody here. Your belief cannot be measured by me. Your choice of worship cannot be measured by me. Similarly, your faith cannot be measured by me. But any of the 4, moment you give expression to it, it takes a different dimension. In other words, moment you give an expression to your thoughts, either in words or in expression, then all of us can measure it qualitatively and quantitatively. And this is where the Constitution recognizes that yes, with this liberty you have a corresponding right, the right to freedom of speech and expression enshrined in Article 19, but then this freedom is not absolute. There is a reasonable restriction, and one of the restrictions of reasonability is that the state can pass laws which would show that you don't curb others' right, others' dignity, and includes defamation. And this is where I introduce the 3rd aspect of defamation. Defamation recognizes your reputation as your property. Because there is an interesting quote from you who says, and I just read out, that he who steals my purse steals trash, but he that filches from me my good name robs me of that which does not enrich him, but makes me poor indeed. And this is where I answer the question that was put forward by the leader of the opposition. Will you shoot me if I say that you are known, a particular person is known only for his wife? Will you shoot me? The answer is not, it is not relevant whether you will be shot or not, but it is definitely relevant whether you will be hauled up for damages for defamation. And exactly on this point, there is this famous case of Yusupov versus Metro Goldwyn Mayer. In 1934, MGM produced a film called Rasputin the Mad Monk. Now, in that film, the prince was named as Chegatov, a sort of a pun to that of Yusupov, who was shown as killing the Mad Monk, and as an embellishment to it, it was shown that the Mad Monk had ravished his wife and had tried to induce her. Now, in reality, Yusupov was the person responsible for killing the Mad Monk. So when a defamation suit was filed and the defense said that there is a lot of distinction between Yusupov and Chegatov, the only question which the plaintiff's counsel asked was, who according to you was the real killer of Yusupov, to all the people who had seen the film? And the answer was, who according to you was the real killer of the Mad Monk? The answer was Yusupov. So it doesn't matter how you couch your liberty to present something which the second speaker of the proposition admitted and acknowledged that there are 3 classes of people, and this is where there is an admission of today's motion by the opposition. One who knows the history, one who doesn't know the history, one who knows the history, and the 3rd category are the persons who, knowing the history, takes liberties with it. And this is the 3rd category with we are concerned. We are not concerned with the first 2 categories. That is creativity, all right. But this is the 3rd category. Moment you take that, the 3rd category of person, you are taking liberties which is exposing you to the gateway of defamation.
Thank you. Thank you, Subhashita, for that wonderful dissection, like a true legal eagle, of each and every word, parsing out non-existent commas and full stops. I particularly enjoyed your reference to the Yusupov case, because there is a postscript to that story, which is, after a couple of years, a Count and Countess Chegadov did come up and sought and won their defamation suit because the previous people had won. So there was indeed a Count and Countess Chegadov. That I'll move to Shapunda, who will argue against the motion. Over to you, Shapunda.
Mr. Chairman, today you are Mr. Moderator, right? I feel very relaxed because I don't have to speak for very long. Everything has been said. The problem is, as is with parsing, take care of the nouns and the adjectives will take care of themselves. Literary liberties are not taking liberties with literature. Taking liberties with creativity is not creative liberty. What exactly is this business then? Well, I don't know much about defamation. God knows I haven't defamed anybody, nor am I a very creative person. How does one create them? For instance, how does one write a poem, create a piece of music, paint, or if you like, how does one derive a mathematical hypothesis, create an organization, or a family, even a family, which resembles a work of art in one, shedding light, and two, spreading shareable pleasure. That is how you create. And every time we look for how we actually create, try to reason, how explain how we do, we are thrown back on certain ideas whose KYCs have not been renewed in literary theory. For example, a rare mix of instinct and discipline, genius and training, which words, old words, like the word imagination, which are still current. Beauty may be born, like Venus in Botticelli's painting, but there is always something anterior to that birth. When we speak of creativity theologically, we can think of it in two ways. One is adding form to matter, what is known as the hylomorphic hypothesis. For example, there is a block of stone and Michelangelo makes it into David. That is one kind of creativity. Or you can think of creativity ex nihilo, out of nothing. What you get in the book of Genesis in the Bible. God said, and there was light and there was everything else. But even then, you will recall that the Christian God was needed. There has to be something anterior to breathe life into that which is created. You will immediately recall that God breathed life into the first human. The word inspiration is derived from the Latin word inspirare, that is to blow into, to infuse with breath. And that is when we are forced to think the unthinkable, because behind even the earliest poem, there is language. Behind the first piece of music, there are these imitations of the pleasurable sounds of nature, if you like. So we have to resort to myths, and these are myths of inspiration. You will immediately be reminded of Valmiki, Sauti, Cadman, Hesiod, Tukaram, Namdev. They were all divinely ordered to create. Why? Because we do not know what the origin of creativity is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the myth of creation, and we are at the moment living in a country where we need to depend on inspiration for everything. If for either from some heavenly god, some people believe that heavenly gods have their birthplace somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, or more earthly gods which inspire everything from food festivals to prayer meetings. The problem is not that we are docile as a people. The problem is that people who are in authority try to insert themselves into the unthinkable. Every time you create, there is something that you uncreate. Valmiki gives up his life as a robber. Hesiod is no longer a shepherd, he's more than a shepherd. The old poem is replaced by a new one, the old language by the new. Authorities don't want to uncreate anything. They want things to remain as they are if they inspire. This is where the problem comes. And defamation, where you have to think of the problem of disturbing old habits of thought, of fame, being a habit of thinking about certain approved values, then creativity gets in the way. But as we have seen in repeated changes of government, in elections or elsewhere, authorities can't blow into anything when they insert themselves. Instead, they are blown away. And their horrid deeds are blown into every eye. Now can you blow into the eye? No. The model metaphor is not mine, it is Shakespeare in Macbeth. Why the eye? Because the horned trumpet blower that you see atop the dome of Victoria Memorial Hall is not a fairy, as the local newspapers tell you. It is the emblem of Fama Bona, good fame, defending the Queen's reputation against Fama Mala, ill fame. You can think then of liberty or creative liberty, just as in the case of creativity, in two ways. One, liberty, such as the individual subjects or citizens' rights, privacy, etc., from the state, or something that is assured by the state, security, law, and so on. All that is being done is using one definition of liberty to revile creators and stop them from getting the other. So if you oppose the authorities because of you are opposing the state policy in one aspect, you will lose your individual liberty for thought and expression and what else, and you become anti-state or anti-national. Hence, we oppose the motion.
Thank you, Shapunda. If Shobhushachita went into splitting the seams of each word, you have gone onto the ontology of the matter, and it was as if stepping back in time. I mean, I felt like the Caddo first year undergraduate student I was at Jadavpur with you. And thank you for highlighting the power of creativity versus the power of dominance in the political domain. And that wonderful idea of shedding light and sharing of pleasure around creativity. With that, I'll now come to the leader of the opposition, Ashok, to put forward his summary for against the motion and your questions to the motion.
Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, in one fell swoop, Professor Chakrabarti has made the case for the opposition clear. If you actually believe that creative liberty is a gateway to defamation, you are going to give in to all the fascistic forces who would curb that liberty that you have. Beware. As Sharmila rightly said, be careful. It is to be careful that we have to. And that is very important. He also very clearly refuted Shobhushachita's comment that taking liberties with creativity is not creative liberty. I always knew it. The lawyers would indulge in semantics and simian antics, but they'd never come to the proposition. You know, it's like he would tell you that a fire engine is red. You know why? Because there are 8 men on it. 8 and 4 makes 12. 12 is the length of a ruler. Queen Elizabeth was a ruler. Queen Elizabeth was also the name of a ship. Ships sail on seas. Seas have fishes. Fishes have fins. The fins are close to the Russians. The Russians were red. Therefore, a fire engine is red. That is his logic. So, first and foremost, he has misread the proposition. Creative liberty means the outpouring of creativity. You are allowed to be creative and therefore to be responsible. And if you are responsible, you will not defame. Also, the example of Rasputin is a clear example of the devil citing scripture to suit his purpose. What does it matter if you defame someone like Rasputin or Daud Ibrahim? You defame someone who deserves to be defamed or does not deserve to be defamed. Query of Narendra Modi, Rahul Gandhi, right at this moment, all the channels are debating on the accidental Prime Minister. That is the point of debate. Whether this film starring Anupam Kher as Manmohan Singh deserves to be shown or not. That is a relevant point. Don't take soft targets, easy targets. Sharmila did come up with this very erudite speech, but I felt that when she said careful, she was being a little temperamental. She was also speaking on our side. She was speaking for creative liberty. And then when she mentioned Wendy Brown and hermeneutics, I thought that was the ornamental touch. But she began with Mark Twain, the beginning, and humor. That was the sentimental touch. But whether sentimental, ornamental, or temperamental, the fact remains that she was fundamentally mental. Speaking on the other side, she supported our cause. And Dr. Chatterjee have already dealt with earlier. He was a very good second shadow leader of the opposition, speaking for us, speaking about the importance of creativity, that there's goodness all around, and we require leaders like Garga Chatterjee. He is my leader too. He will always speak in favor of the truth, even if that truth is biting. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, this motion falls flat on its face. As Shapunda rightly pointed out, all the job has been done in the framing itself. And he warned you that if my time is up now, remember, so is yours. So creative liberty deserves to be maintained. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ashok. May I now turn to Shobhushachita to sum up on behalf of the motion. The sparks have already beginning to fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't believe a lawyer, but just read the motion. If, according to you, creativity and creative liberty is one and the same, please vote for the opposition. If, according to you, you understand the nuance between creativity and creative liberty, then please be with us. Second, the theory of appropriation was propounded by Ashoke. And in furtherance of that theory, exercising the creative liberty, he takes the moderator in his side. This is the example of creative liberty which you take to appropriate the moderator in your side. And this is where he exposes the opposition to gateway of defamation, because a moderator is supposed to be neutral and not taking sides. But this per se may or may not amount to defamation. He exposes the moderator at the gateway. And the expression gateway is abundantly clear. Thirdly, a question was put by the leader himself that I know when to show what. And this is the restriction that is being automatically put. But when you are taking creative liberties, you are not knowing when to show what. And this is where when the proposition is coming in. So if you admit that you know when to show what, why at all have this question? You show whatever you want, the when will not come. But the opening words of the speaker admits that the proposition admits that a filmmaker knows when to show what, and he admits that yes, he is with the proposition that knowing when to show what, you are yourself imposing the reasonable restriction that I had talked of in the opening speech of mine. Now, short of semantics, short of cracking jokes, take the motion as it is. You don't have to believe a lawyer, you don't have to believe a filmsman, believe yourself. I read the motion in simple English language. Creative liberty is only a gateway to defamation. And I just rephrase it in another manner as the opposition has submitted. Creativity is only a gateway to defamation. Now, according to the opposition, both of these mean the same. Don't believe the lawyer, but if you think both of these mean the same, then vote for the opposition. But if you see the difference between creativity and creative liberty, and I read the motion once again, creative liberty is only a gateway to defamation as opposed to creativity is only a gateway to defamation. You see the difference. And the difference, ladies and gentlemen, is not subtle. I started with a question and I end with a question, and I ask the same question that the leader of the proposition said, that the test is if the opposition knows when to show what, they know the distinction between creativity and creative liberty.
Thank you, Sabyasachi. And as I said, sparks have begun to fly, and we have heard both sides of the motion, and we have heard, come across a number of very nuanced, sophisticated arguments and great humor from both sides. I'm just reminded of Charles Buckley's famous saying that where in context to a possible defamation, he said, my initial reaction was to sue her for defamation of character, but then I realized I had no character myself. And we have through all of this, so that's me, the moderator. And there were two Dr. Chakrabartis on stage, one the real one, the other a pretender. But on that note, I will throw this open to the audience. You have 5 minutes for questions. Please stand up, say who you are. Are there microphones in the audience? Yeah, are there microphones in the audience? Please, can you say for whom is the question? And as I reminded, there's a hand that's gone up. It's a lady over there, and she gets the priority. Yep. And if I may remind the audience, please put a question, not a comment.
Good evening. My name is Roma Bhattacharjee, and my question is to the last speaker, Sabyasachi Da. He makes a distinction between creative liberty and liberty, and I'd like him to explain that because I don't understand any form of creativity where liberty is not integral to that process. You're perhaps using a very pejorative understanding of liberty, which I don't understand. I do believe that the highest form of creativity, liberty, is integral to the process, and any splitting hairs on that is entirely facetious. I'd like you to explain that. Thank you.
Great question.
Ma'am, the distinction I drew was not between creativity and liberty, but the two expressions, creative liberty and creativity. That is the distinction that I drew. I agree with you that there is an inherent liberty in creativity itself, and that is why I quoted the Constitution, that liberty of thought is something which cannot be measured. But the moment you put expressions to it, you are putting it a restriction. And as I said, that I adopted the question that was put forward, that is, from a filmmaker's point of view, when to show what. That is an automatic restriction which is being put in his own creativity. Of course, he has the liberty to show whatever he wants to and whenever he wants to. That liberty is always there, as the liberty is there ingrained in any creative process. But that liberty and creative liberty is not the same. When you are talking of creative liberty, you are talking of a liberty where you are transgressing that restriction of when to show what, and that is when the motion is coming in, when you are transgressing that restriction and you are not giving full effect to that liberty in you. That is where you are bordering around the gateway of defamation, which may be defamation, which may not be defamation. That is the distinction that I am making. I agree with you that element of creativity will obviously have liberty. All our thoughts, there is a liberty in all our thoughts. But that doesn't, creative liberty, when we say what we commonly refer to as artistic license, it is not synonymous. Creativity and creative liberty is not synonymous to each other, though there is liberty in every aspect of creativity. That's all.
Can I just respond to that 1 second?
Yes, for a minute.
You know, I fully appreciate what Sabyasachi Babu is saying, but only that he is restricting the ambit of the motion very much, you know, because he's saying that this gateway doesn't necessarily lead to defamation, it could lead to it. And he's saying that creative liberty is different from creativity, and therefore he is actually rephrasing the motion to suit his purpose, which is fine. I'm just reminded of this lost in translation bit of that famous statement, the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak, which was translated into several languages and finally from English to French and then to Slovenian and Lithuanian and Romanian and back to Russian and finally back to English. And it says, the vodka is good, but the meat is terrible.
Thank God we were not talking about Google Translate. I'd like to invite a second question from the audience if there's one. There's another hand that's gone up at the back.
Good evening. My name is Amapa Bhattacharya, and my question is for Mr. Viswanathan. You said that one should be careful while being creative. How would how does responsibility and creativity go hand in hand? I mean, you have to be irresponsible to a certain extent to be creative. And you said that a filmmaker knows when to show what, but it's only things that are inopportune, that should not be shown at the time that they are shown. These are the things that invite cases of defamation or suits of defamation. So do you think you're sort of contradicting yourself? And
No, creativity is unbridled, that is true. But that creativity will truly be productive if it is tempered with responsibility. If you are totally irresponsible, then the effect will be negative. I mean, the more sugar you take doesn't make it a pleasurable experience. I'm saying, and I think the proposition also agreed, that there is an element of responsibility. Otherwise, where is the cerebral aspect of it, which is built into liberty? It is to be unreasonable that I said, do not follow the norm, be iconoclastic. But that doesn't mean cut off heads without reason, you know. Look at The Great Dictator by Charles Chaplin. It was a lampooning of Adolf Hitler when he was in full swing. That was a great risk that he took. He used hyperbole. Hyperbole is very important. Expressionism, all of that. But there is a purpose to it. It's not just, it would be defamation if it were random. There is a difference between Dadaism and Surrealism. Dadaism is random, and Surrealism is the unfettered working of the human mind. It's a very thin line. You have to really go deep into the matter.
There is one last question, after which we will have a Dhoni vote. Not MS Dhoni vote, but a sound vote.
I am Ranjan Das Gupta, and this question is addressed to Mr. Ashoke Viswanathan. Just now, sir, you mentioned about the great dictator, but have you forgotten that Marshal Joseph Stalin, seeing the movie, said that hated characters like the Fuhrer should never be shown with such buffoonery? What have you got to say, sir?
No. The purpose of Chaplin showing the film was to show how cruelty is something to be completely despised and abhorred. Whether Joseph Stalin liked the film or doesn't like it doesn't make much of a difference, because Stalin's record speaks for what he did. So I wouldn't really like to take the remarks of one dictator talking about another, but I would say that Chaplin used creative liberty to actually create a hyperbolic character called Hinkle to represent Adolf Hitler.
Sorry, why don't you say that? I think it's on.
It's on. No, I just said it, that this was an extreme form of film criticism.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard a wonderful panel debating the pros and cons of a topic that is timely and topical. We heard references to semantics, semiotics, and even, I think I heard it right, simian antics. But now it is up to you, the audience, the great Janta, to decide which side of the motion has won. So those of you who think that the motion of the day has won the argument, please put your hands up. It seems a bit of a split verdict as of now, but hands down, please. Don't put up two hands. Don't put up two hands. No need to be so passionate about this. Can I also have a show of hands for those who think that the opposition has carried the day? I think that is now a more resounding verdict, though I think there have been some cross voters. And with that, we will bring this evening to a close. And I would like to thank all the debaters for their time and for the energy and the passion you have brought into this evening's program, and to Eastern Metropolitan Club for this wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you all our eminent speakers for presenting a wonderful evening of debate. I would take this opportunity to invite Sri Samar Ghosh, the Secretary of Eastern Metropolitan Club, to come forward, give a vote of thanks. Mr. Ghosh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is a very emotional evening for me. I feel immense satisfaction over the success of this debate, which is my homage to my departed father, Samar Ghosh, the founder president of Eastern Metropolitan Club. He was the inspiration behind our pursuit of excellence. His guardian soul still guides me in whatever I do, in my thoughts and my dreams. Well, I wrap up this session offering my heartfelt thanks to all the stalwarts on the dais who have added value and glamour to this debate, and my gratitude to the esteemed audience who have kindly graced this occasion with their presence. Ladies and gentlemen, debate is the MC's another cultural and academic phase initiated this year, and we wish to continue this annually in the name of late Samar Ghosh. It will be our endeavor to make such debate more and more attractive in both topic and participation. I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to our associate partners, Exide Industries Limited and the Telegraph for being with us in this captivating venture. Thanks are due to the vendors, Mondol Decorators and Elegance for their support to make this event successful. And last not the least, I am thankful to Mr. Shushanta Kumar Bishwas, one of our esteemed members, for his enormous efforts towards planning and execution of this event. Well, Eastern Metropolitan Club is spreading its wings on all the diverse fronts. It is our journey in which we need all of your support, and with your active involvement and the best wishes, we will be moving forward. Thank you everyone. Thank you for a lovely evening.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. We will now be, Mr. Ghosh will be handing over the mementos to our honorable speakers. We'll start with Dr. Garga Chatterjee. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand, please. Sharmila Ray. Sabyasachi Choudhury. Debanjan Chakrabarti. Swapan Chakrabarti. Savi Sharma. And Ashoke Viswanathan. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wrap up this show by expressing our sincere thanks to all the members, guests, and visitors, including from the press who have been present here and have been patient listeners as well as participated in debate with his interesting questions. As Secretary AMC has already stated that this is going to continue. We have mentioned that this is annual debate. We'll wrap up by thanking our speakers also for taking their time out and being present here with a topic which was a bit critical. I'll finally call upon our associates. Anybody from Telegraph, please. Pritham Kumar was supposed to be here. I don't know whether he's still there. Pritham, are you here?
There will be a small memento for Mr. Shushanta Kumar Bishwas also from Eastern Metropolitan Club.
And anybody from Exide, please. I was told that Shaptushi is going to be there. Yes, please come. Nobody from Telegraph? Supposed to be there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now request everybody to join for the high tea. Thank you so much.